I think that when you consistently and regularly take part in a sport, especially for school or in any domain where you have matches in the sport and you have to prepare for these matches to make sure you're performing at your absolute best, where there is pressure, I think situations and environments like that are very helpful for the development of character and the development of self. The reason why I say this is because I think back to my past when I was playing soccer for my high school team and for a little bit for my primary school team, but mostly I was playing soccer for my high school team. And the nice thing about soccer is that it's a very nice and enjoyable sport to watch, especially if both teams are good at the sport, or at least if they're evenly matched and you can see some type of technique and some type of impressive plays from each team. And I think it's very easy to get lost in the sauce in a sense when you look at people playing professional sports on TV, and we can physically see the bodies doing some really cool things. And our head will think, oh, since he can do that, I think there's a feasible reality where I can do that. I could probably do that, you know? And the more and more you have this kind of idea of I could do that, the easier the sport starts to feel and the easier that you think the sport starts to become. And I think I would call this the idea of having some type of false sense of competence in the sport despite never actually playing it. I know online a lot of the time we call this something like the Dunning-Kruger effect. But what I do like about actually trying to play the sport yourself, especially in a setting like a sports program or a soccer club, for example, is that you get to realize that what they're doing on TV is pretty tough, especially when you are put into the shoes of players that you judge and players that you watch on your TV. So I think that's one very big lesson that sports teaches, which I really do appreciate, is that it's a lot harder to do something than it is to look at someone else do it. You won't realize how hard something is until you actually have to do it yourself. Action is usually harder than ideals. And then another thing that I also appreciate about sports is it instills this idea that we need to prepare for game day. And by that, I mean, while we, as an audience, when we watch professional sports people or any place in the world or any place in media where someone needs to do a lot of preparation, we don't see the preparation. If you're watching the World Cup final, you only see the World Cup final. Like the TV programs are going to show you, oh, they were doing this in training, they were doing that in training. This guy kicked the ball 700 times in training yesterday and all of that. They're not even going to show you, to some extent, how they got to the finals. They're going to show you the games they played in the group stages, in qualifying before the group stages, going through all the different rounds, like round of 16, quarters, semis to get to the final. All you see is just the final product, which is that World Cup final. But whenever I was in my sports teams, like namely my soccer team, as I keep coming back to, there was a lot of training to be done. You'd find that you have a game on Saturday, you have a match on Saturday, but for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday, you don't have training. But for all those other days, you had to train. And you do the most mundane of things. You don't even kick the ball sometimes. Sometimes coach just wants you to run around the field to build stamina. Sometimes you don't even do impressive things on the ball. Sometimes the coach just wants to make sure you can pass the ball straight. So you spend 2 hours of a day just passing the ball straight and controlling the ball. Something very mundane, something that you don't really think about when you see it on the TV. But these are foundational skills and foundational things that you do need to train and practice in order to perform at your best on game day. And I think that this idea of we have game day, we have a situation where we need to be at our best, we need to combine a lot of skills that we learn, and we need to prepare for those skills, we need to practice those skills. I think that can be translated into real life in any type of job or any type of competency that we're trying to build. One really big thing we need to do is practice. So that's also something that I appreciate from being someone who had to run, I guess, tens of hours. I was about to say hundreds, but tens of hours on a soccer field without actually touching the ball for soccer training. And another thing that I do enjoy about sports is that there's no really getting around it. Sports teaches you how to deal with losing. I don't think it's a guarantee that everyone who does sports and loses at sports is going to get the perfect lesson on how to lose. But one thing it'll definitely show you is that you're not invincible. You're not the greatest of all time. Well, if you want to be, not yet. And you are going to lose to someone better. And when the loss takes place, you have to deal with the fact that I wasn't good enough today. I made a few mistakes. The entire team made a few mistakes. If I did this, I could have won. If we didn't do that, we could have won. The point is, you get served up a loss. And now the onus is on you to process that loss, to process that negative feeling of not getting what you wanted and moving on from there, moving on to the next game, moving on to tomorrow because tomorrow is training. And if it was a game and you had homework, you move on to your homework because work still has to get done. You have to continue with other parts of your life. And I don't think losing in a sports game is the only place where we can have this negative emotion. Sometimes it can be you don't do as well as you expected on a test. Maybe you forgot to do homework and you feel really bad about that. There are usually events in life that carry negative emotions. And what I love about sports is that it taught me to basically acknowledge these negative emotions like, oh, I lost today and I hate the fact that I lost. But I'm going to move on and I'm going to focus on what I need to do now. I'm going to focus on the rest of my tasks for the day. And I think that's also something that's very invaluable to learn. The idea that when you get a setback, when something doesn't go your way, you can still move forward and carry on and not sit and sulk. That's a pretty powerful lesson to learn. And the last one for me is one of my favorite lessons in any domain of life. And it's just this idea that you can't do things alone. Hypothetically, I think we could argue to some extent that you could, for example, make a solo play in a sport and maybe run the entire field and score a goal. But even then, it's arguable to say that for you to get the space to run across the entire field, your teammates had to be there to basically be decoys for the other team to mark. But I'm going on a tangent. The point is, in a lot of sports, it's a team game. The ones I played, I did soccer, which was 11v11. You have other teammates to pass the ball to and also to help you out. Like if you're trapping the ball or controlling the ball and someone is about to approach you, your teammates will shout out, oh, there's a man coming, man on. And then that makes you alert to be like, oh, I got to get rid of the ball really quickly. That's teamwork. That's camaraderie. And even in another sport that I did with less teammates, but the point was still there, it was debating. In debating, it was 3v3, and while my first speaker was speaking and then my third speaker and I would talk about, oh, you could say this, you could say that. They'd pick up on things that I wouldn't be able to pick up on during the debate that I could use to help us win the debate. That's teamwork. And I think when you're in a healthy situation in a sport and in a team, you are able to learn how to basically be a role player in a team. You know your role for the team and you're able to execute that to make the team and the entire system work as well as it can. I don't quite remember the saying, but they say, I think it's on the lines of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I really do think that you see this and you feel this in a sports setting. You have your own skills. Your teammates have their own skills. But once you combine those skills and work together and try not to get into each other's way, you really develop aspects of teamwork and you really develop this idea that I know I can't do a few things, or I know I can rely on this person for this and this and that. So when the time comes, I'll rely on them for this and this and that. And they can do the same for me. And also, it just builds discipline, in my opinion, especially if you're not star player. If you are a star player, I think that also teaches its own lessons, but I'm not too well equipped to speak on that because I was hardly ever a star player in any of my sports. I think the most I could say is that it does teach you this idea of being able to handle pressure and a world of responsibilities on your shoulders and to basically perform while you have all that pressure and responsibility on your shoulders. That's for star players. But for the regular role player who's probably going to be a 60 overall when there's like a 75 overall player on the team, you learn this idea of discipline to be like, hey, I know my limits. I know what my job is. My job is not to do that. That's another person's job. I'm just the right back. I don't have to dribble the entire field like Messi. I have my right winger for that. If we need that, I'll just pass him the ball. He's got it. My job is to just do the dirty work, just defend, tackle the ball, win it back. And aside from discipline, I think that just also seeps into this idea of understanding what your role is to achieve success and just working on that role to once more help the entire team, help an entire collective as opposed to just worrying about yourself. So that's the lessons that I picked up from sports, and I feel these are lessons that are very important for us to learn in any aspect of life, especially the teamwork part whenever you have to do projects with friends or even projects in the real world, and anything that's pretty important that needs you to work well with other people. I really do think that the teamwork you learn from sports can be leveraged in that domain. But for now, those are all the lessons I did learn from sports. I hope you found some value in that. And any closing words of advice? I would say if you can, just try it out. Try a team sport. Try any sport, in fact, because I know that you'll learn different lessons from those kinds of things as well. But the point is, just try out a sport. Have fun. And I didn't even talk about the mental benefits of like, oh, it makes you happier, or the physical benefits of like you're moving your body and all of that. So there's a lot to gain from being in a team sport or any sport in general. And again, if I were you, I would honestly just look for a sport I'm interested in. Don't worry about how good you are or how bad you are. Just try out a sport and see what you can do in it. See the lessons you can learn from it. And I don't think that you'll come out of it with too much regret. But that's all for me today. And until next time, I'll see you.